Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. I thought it would be a good opportunity to get a better understanding of what kind of construction is going to be going on for the next several weeks, or actually months, on the Sagamore Bridge. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom Kerr. I'm the administrator for the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority and a lifelong resident of Bourne. So throughout my life, I've been involved and paid attention to a lot of the bridge issues, having them in such close proximity to my home. And you know, when I was younger, there were periodic maintenance efforts that had to go on, and oftentimes they would be working on the bridge when nobody knew anything about it, and it would inconvenience a few people in the Upper Cape, and then it went away and people forgot about it. But as the growth on Cape Cod has happened over the last few decades, there are some really potential adverse impacts from lengthy construction on the bridges. So I think it's appropriate and valuable to have an opportunity to come in and ask the questions of the Army Corp of Engineers. Many of you know that the Army Corps is responsible for the bridges that cross over the canal, not only the two vehicle bridges, but also the train bridge, which is important to us as the Cape Flyer. And so I know we've received a lot of calls. I've had a relationship with the Corps for a long time because of our Cape Flyer efforts going over the train bridge, and in my previous life, you know, working with them on issues around the canal region. And so I know that this work is supposed to start, I think, the first or second day of April. So this is an opportunity today for them to make a presentation on exactly, you know, what is going to go on, what the scope of the project entails. It has to do with roadway joints on the Sagamore Bridge, which is fairly significant, and I think both John and Sean will explain them in detail. They have a PowerPoint to explain it. Many folks have expressed concern and interest in this matter, and I know there are some legislators here and legislative aides here. Congressman Keating called this morning, and I know Andrew's here representing his interest. He's quite interested, obviously, as in his role as a federal legislator, dealing with the Corps on a regular basis. And we have Wendy Northcross from the Chamber, who represents Cape interests as well as anybody I know. We have Will Crocker, the local state rep from here. I'm Dottie from Representative Peake's office. So there's a lot of legislative interest in folks, elected officials, decision makers. And Sue Moran, the chairman of the Falmouth Board of Selectmen, here. Christie from the Cape Cod Commission. I shouldn't have started naming names because I just saw my good friend Andrew Gottlieb, who's now at the APCC, and he's a champion.
I'm insulted.
I was getting to you. My longest friend, Marie. Marie and I grew up in Bourne. Marie actually grew up, I would say, about 200 yards from the Sagamore Bridge, Commonwealth Ave there. So she's seen these issues, and her and I worked on the Sagamore Rotary elimination for many, many years, standing in that rotary on Saturday. So anyway, we've seen a lot of the activity, but there's no question, as a result of the work that happened about 6 or 7 years ago, there were, you know, monumental backups that not only the chambers were concerned about, and not only the Upper Cape folks were concerned about, but Lower Cape folks. Representative Peake is here. She lives in Provincetown, and she's expressed to me, and I see Mike back there in the back row. I'm sorry, Mike, selecting the sandwich. That there are economic impacts. And talking to my good friend Tony Shepley last week, he does a tremendous job, you know, and has one of the biggest operations, certainly in the state, when it comes to lumber and building homes and the like. So I think if we let the Corps at least make their presentation, I think there's an agenda that explains what's going to transpire today, and then at the end certainly ask questions. I think they're going to say that it really doesn't speak specifically today to the third bridge or the replacement bridge or those type of things. We're going to try to focus on this particular project and why it has to happen, why the time it has to happen. I know Representative Hunt just walked in too, so I apologize if I missed somebody. So with that, I will turn it over to Sean McDonald, who is from Concord, but he works the.
I'm from the Bourne.
Well, I mean, he works out of the Concord office.
Nope.
Wait, oh, you don't?
No?
I thought you did. Well, it's all right.
Yeah, I just hide well.
All right.
I guess.
So this is Sean McDonald, John McPherson from the Corps.
Well, thank you. As Tom said, my name is Sean McDonald. I'm the canal manager at Cape Cod Canal. John McPherson here is the deputy canal manager, and he's the real brains of the operation. So he'll be answering the hard questions today. And what I'd like to do now is, it works. I'd just like to provide an overview. And first of all, thank you very much for coming today. We're really happy to have this opportunity to present some of the information of what's going on with the bridge right now, why we want to do it, or why we need to do it, I should say, and what is going to be happening on both bridges in the near future. Today, the agenda for today is we'll be talking a little bit about why we're doing the presentation. Some quick facts here on the bridge. And then John will be talking in detail about what we're actually the work that we'll be doing on the bridge this summer and this fall. We'll lay out the schedule for you and talk about some of the traffic control measures, some of the interactions that we have with the public while the work is going on. There's plenty of good pictures here showing you some of the conditions on the bridge you don't necessarily see just driving over the bridge in your car. And then, as Tom mentioned, we're available to answer questions. If we can't answer your questions here, we'll be glad to take them back to the folks back in Concord who will probably be able to answer them. Okay, so purpose of the meeting. Well, we're here, as I said, to provide you really information on the scope of the upcoming contract that we have, talk about the schedule that has been proposed and that we are working for with our contractor, and really to talk about this joint replacement contract that we're working on here. As Tom mentioned, this is not a presentation on replacing the bridges or constructing a third bridge or the bridge studies. As I said, if you have concerns, we can take them back to Concord and the people who are working those, but we're really not prepared to talk about replacements of the bridge at this time, other than just to give you an update on what the conditions of the bridges are. Okay, so thank you. Okay, so let me just go through this slide here real quick, and this is sort of a real brief overview of what we're going to be talking about today. As you may have read in the papers or seen in the Corps of Engineers media handout, Corps of Engineers in November of 2017 awarded a $1.7 million contract to replace the joints on both the Bourne and the Sagamore Bridge. That was awarded to our Zappo Corporation of Stoughton, Mass. Thank you. I was going to say Stoneham for some reason. Stoughton. The contract is scheduled to begin on the first week in April 2nd. Work will be done first on the Sagamore Bridge. The goal is to have the Sagamore Bridge work completed before Memorial Day, at which point then the contractor will sort of go into hibernation, and then in the fall after Labor Day, the contractor will go on to the Bourne Bridge and he will replace those joints. The goal is also that we will have one lane in each direction open at all times during the construction. The lane will be increased a little bit from the current 10 feet per lane width to 12 feet per lane. And the contractor will be working 7 days a week. He'll be working 2 shifts a day. And as the closer we get to completion time, I should say the closer we get to Memorial Day, you may see even 3 shifts if we have to. But our goal is we will be off those bridges before the peak summer traffic happens. We understand that no matter what we do, we're going to impact traffic, and so we have learned from past contracts that we're going to have the contractor work as efficiently as possible so that the traffic impact is minimized. Now, the work that we'll be doing, as I mentioned, we have joint replacements, we have concrete and steel repair. We'll be patching the roadways. We'll be on the Bourne Bridge in the fall. We'll also be repairing sidewalks and waterproofing on the bridge. And then at the same time, because we're taking lanes and we have the workspace available, our local Corps of Engineers, electricians, and maintenance people will be up on the bridges working some other maintenance issues that aren't directly related to the joint, but that we're sort of taking this target of opportunity to repair. Good. So that is the real quick facts, and what I'll like to do now is I'd like to turn it over to John McPherson. He'll go through and talk about the details and provide you some additional information here. Good. So, thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Tom. So we prepared some slides. We'll get in. There's some pictures later on in the presentation that kind of shows the specifics of what we're doing. This is kind of an overview of the Sagamore Bridge. It shows you kind of lists here. Same work. The primary work that's driving the schedule and the lane restrictions on the Sagamore Bridge is this replacing of the modular joint. The location of that modular joint is right here. Market Basket is here. Christmas Tree Shop is there. It's where the steel superstructure of the bridge meets the concrete abutment, the south abutment. It's the expansion joint, so there's bridge bearings at this location that accommodate the expansion and contraction of the steel bridge. So it has to move back and forth. There's a modular expansion joint that accommodates that movement. That's the primary work that we're doing that causes the lane restrictions. While we have lane restrictions for that work, we're also doing steel repairs at two locations, and there are smaller joint locations on the Sagamore Bridge. There's 7 smaller compression seal locations. Same premise, they accommodate expansion and contraction of the steel. They're just smaller movement locations. This is a similar slide for the Bourne Bridge. There's no modular joint that we're doing on the bridge right now in the fall, but there is concrete and waterproofing on both the sidewalk and the curb, the brush curb side, that have substantially degraded and they need to be replaced. I'll have some pictures of that later on. There's 10. The Bourne Bridge has 4 extra spans, so there's more of these smaller compression steel locations. There's 10 of those on the Bourne Bridge, and there's a few more locations of steel repairs required on the Bourne Bridge. So again, here's a slide just showing you a little bit more detail, the location of that modular joint on the Sagamore Bridge. The bridge bearings sit here, so the modular joint is designed to accommodate the movement, provide a smooth ride, absorb impacts, the heavy impacts that the Sagamore Bridge sees. This is a picture from the sidewalk looking at the modular joint. This is what you see on the road surface. This is an example of a drawing of a section that shows how it functions, how it works. I have another picture later on that'll show you a little bit more detail. So again, location. This is a picture looking to the side. The modular joint is up above here. You have the steel superstructure meeting the concrete abutment. So I have the next 6 slides are showing the existing conditions. We've actually spent quite a bit of time maintaining this joint over the last couple of years. This joint was installed in 2007. Just lately, we've had some concrete issues where the concrete's been breaking up. We've had snowplow impacts that have fractured some of it. We have exposed support boxes for it, so it's just been taking a beating lately. And we've been required to be out there quite a bit patching it. When we go out, we've patched it with both pavement, regular cold patch pavement, as well as special concrete that's supposed to last a little bit longer when there's movement involved. We've had some success in patching it, but they don't really hold up over time.
John, can you go back one second? One comment. As John mentioned, we've on this joint specifically, in October, we patched that bottom left pitcher. That was all nice finished concrete in late October, and we hoped it would make it over the winter, and it's just about made it over the winter. But as you can see, this picture here was taken 2-3 weeks ago, and this is one of the areas that we get calls from the public on with potholes on the bridge. And just because of the location, as John mentioned, and the heavy traffic, the impacts on the concrete, we really cannot patch it anymore. We really have to take it all up, go back down to the foundation of the bridge, and lay new concrete in, so that we're not up there basically every week we're up there. Before we repaired it, the guys were telling me we're up there about every 3 weeks or every 2 weeks, patching potholes in this joint and other joints. Since we've patched it the last month and a half, it's every 3 weeks. So it's really time to take this joint out and to replace it with a new joint that hopefully will last a little bit longer. Thank you.
Again, just a few slides showing the work. We have been out there. We've been checking it, both the top side and the underside of this. Really, every week we spend time on it. Again, a lot of them are impromptu. A pothole will develop, and we need to scramble to get up there. Couple of pictures of the underside. You have this concrete deterioration on the top. You also have concrete deterioration underneath. Underneath that will be fixed. And to replace the modular joint, it's not just plopping in a new modular joint. All this concrete gets demolished down to the floor beams and back to the walls of the abutment. So it's a new modular joint as well as new concrete on either side to lock in the new modular joint. Another couple of pictures of again, this is the underside. You have concrete spalling, you have exposed rebar reinforcement, you have movement of the joint that has damaged some of the components of the joint that holds it and keeps it stable. So this is what the new joint, this is a rendition of what a new modular joint looks like. It's designed for heavy impact, smooth riding, and to accommodate the movement. This slide just shows it's from the demolition, the expected demolition. So you have the modular joint. You have the modular joint that's here, but like the picture showed, this concrete corbel that sticks out, all this gets demolished down. So we're demolishing, 6 feet down by 8 feet or so this way. So when that work is being done, large hole in the bridge, obviously we can't give the road back when we're replacing that modular joint. This just shows you some of the detail of the joint, how it functions. You have the road surface here. These are held up by these pieces of steel that can slide back and forth within these boxes. Some of the pictures that we showed of the damage, this concrete here and pavement is gone, and you can see the top. What's exposed is the top of these support boxes for the existing modular joint. So that's the modular joint on the Sagamore Bridge. The Sagamore Bridge also has 7 locations of these smaller compression seal joints where you have a new membrane that gets put down in. First you have to clean out both surfaces and install a new compression seal into them. It doesn't look like an awful lot of work, but these are actually very important in that beneath these compression seal locations, there's joints that hold up the bridge. It's important that these seals are maintained to prevent water, corrosive water, from getting through the deck down onto the bridge bearings. They cause quite a bit of damage to the bearings if they're left unmaintained. Few locations on the Sagamore Bridge, while we have the lanes taken for the modular joint, there's some steel repairs to get done. This is kind of a typical armor plating on the Sagamore Bridge, where one of the plates has gotten ripped off by a snowplow. That'll be replaced, as well as there's some of the steel joints have gotten damaged, snowplows, heavy trucks, and whatnot. So that'll also be repaired. To repair that, you have to saw cut and get down into install new anchors, new steel, and lock it in concrete. This is a slide that shows the work on the Bourne Bridge. So you have a sidewalk side, and then the brush curb side. Concrete on both, and then a waterproofing membrane over the top. The waterproofing membrane has failed, and the concrete beneath that is spalling and in bad shape. The risk of not correcting this is that we have the electric utilities running underneath the brush curb side for the bridge lights. We have a lot of electrical conduits, telephone, cable, fiber optic running under the sidewalk. So those utilities can get impacted if we don't repair these locations, as well as there's curbing. The granite curb that runs along both sides can start leaning into the roadway if we allow that concrete to degrade any further. So we're switching to, I guess, the schedule. The schedule for the work. We are performing the work in phases, and I have some slides coming up that'll show you what the phases look like. We're going to get started April 2nd right now is with the first day that we'll take a lane on the Sagamore Bridge. We'll complete phase 1 to completion, then move on to phase 2 and phase 3. There is a hard requirement in the contract to be off the bridge before Memorial Day. We've tried to incorporate all the lessons learned on past projects. We required the contractor to work 7 days a week, multiple shifts, and right now I think they're planning on working 2 8-hour shifts to get started. But if they need to, they'll add up more, another shift or more workers per shift. It's around this schedule, these dates shows it about 54 days or so on the Sagamore Bridge. In the fall, it's by these dates, it works out to be about 80 days on the Bourne Bridge. We have a good contractor, Zoppo, has worked on the bridges before. They understand the importance of the bridges and the importance of minimizing traffic impacts whenever possible. They understand that, and they're committed to putting the appropriate resources on this job to get done. Hopefully, we're all hopeful that it will be sooner than that's shown on these slides. Some of that will depend on the weather and other conditions when we start getting into the concrete demolition. But we do hope to beat these the schedule that's shown here. You'll have all the normal signage to communicate what's going on the roadway. There's variable message boards that'll be put out at least a week before we start. We'll also be using all bridge work alerts, coordination with Mass DOT for the 411 system to get the word out on lane restrictions. So here's a slide that shows you on the Sagamore Bridge Phase 1, we're going to be taking a third of the bridge to start, in this will be our work area. Sidewalk remains open during Phase 1. Again, just to kind of gives you a visual. We're working in this area. Two-way traffic maintained on the other 2/3 of the bridge. The lanes are a little bit wider than usual, which hopefully helps traffic flow. Phase 2, we're working in the middle section. Phase 3, we're working on the far east side of the bridge. Bourne Bridge, it's just kind of flipped. The sidewalk is on the west side of the Bourne Bridge, so the phases go similar fashion. Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3 on the Bourne Bridge. So that's just, again, the dates. And I put a conclusion sheet in here. I mean, it is required. The modular joint, again, the modular joint is the primary work on the Sagamore Bridge. There's no question that it needs to be replaced, and we have to do it. We can't do it in the middle of winter, and we can't do it just at night. Those are some of the comments that that we've seen quite a bit. It just doesn't work in the winter on this type of work. We've done what we can to structure the contract to reduce traffic impacts.
So my Wendy North Crossing and Cape Cod Chamber, my primary concern is that Columbus Day is the new Labor Day. So Labor Day September is our second busiest month. I see you've got 2 months on the Sagamore, but 3 months on the Bourne. And of everything that you explained to me, that worries me the most. Is there any compression that you can you get the Bourne Bridge in 2 months as you did the Sagamore Bridge?
Columbus Day will be off the bridge. So I think based on past.
I know, but Phase 1-1, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Phase
Yeah.
1-1 is peak season.
Yep.
Mhm.
That's my concern. could it actually start right after Columbus Day and get done by Thanksgiving?
So you end up getting into colder temperatures. We understand there's no good time. We understand, we can't do it in the dead of winter, and the traffic counts are extraordinarily high in the middle of the winter. The shoulder seasons are our work seasons. And I don't believe we can start after Columbus Day and still get done before we get into cold weather season. You need certain temperatures to do the new waterproofing, concrete curing. So I don't believe we can start after Columbus Day.
How about just before Columbus Day? How many weeks can I buy in Labor Day? After Labor Day. No, it's truly, that's the hard lesson that we've learned in prior bridge closings. And I think my other question is too, what would happen if we don't do this work right now? If we had an impending new bridge project in 3 years,
Yeah, there's
could
no.
you put this out for 3
no-
years? And I know the contract's already been.
Nothing to do with the
awarded,
contract, it has to
but-
do with the structure itself. That modular joint. Modular joints, they're designed based on experience, they last from 5 to 15 years. This one's 10 years old. It can't be put off. We were hoping, sooner is better with this joint in particular.
Yeah, and to answer your question about could this be put off, even if you got a new bridge awarded and it was under construction, we're still going to be having to do these kind of maintenance projects because in reality, you're probably going to take 3 to 5 years for construction. It's going to take 3 to 5 years to get the funding. It'll take 3 to 5 years to get approvals to get the funding. So you're talking 7 to 10 years from now before you get a new bridge, and probably longer. And what we want to do is, no matter what happens, we're still going to have these maintenance projects going on. What we're doing now is we're trying to do this under a controlled situation where we have the contractor on board. He's doing the maintenance, as I said, on a schedule. It'd be a lot more difficult and I think a lot greater impact if one of these joints fails or some other component fails, and then we are scrambling to get the engineer in, to get the contractor on board, and I think it's better for us and better for the community if we are working in a controlled environment where we can still keep the bridge open versus we're working in an emergency situation where we have to close the bridge.
So do new bridges require this kind of activity? I mean, I'm planning for my new bridge, so I want to know what to ask for.
Yes, well, okay, so, yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, these, correct me if I'm wrong, these compression joints and these types of joints are going to be required no matter what type of bridge structure you have. The challenge that we have with these bridges is because they're so narrow, there really isn't a whole lot of space where we can set up the contractor and still provide the traveling public room to move. With a modern bridge, in the bridges that, the bridge designs that we have, you'd have still 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, but then you're going to have a separator in the middle, and then you'll have breakdown lanes on the side, and you'll have separated sidewalks. And so what you see on a lot of these repairs on bridges is, the contractor has taken over 1 lane, but you really don't notice it. Here, because we have we're so limited with the room, anything we do really affects the traveling public.
So that's what I want. Can we ask you, do you have to do all of this in 2018? I mean, this essentially gives us 10 weeks of summer to live on. and you're making me wanna cry right now, I really don't know what else to do but cry. Can the Bourne Bridge get knocked into next spring? That's my high season right there, Labor Day to Columbus Day, some of the best business we have in Cape Cod. I don't know how else to say it.
I just want to add something to what Wendy's saying. Tony Guthrie, I'm with Robert Paul Properties, and I've been living and working on the Cape for about 35 years now. And we seem to keep having the same conversation. I know we're not, and I've got a few statements to make and then some questions to ask. Because there's this thought process that the spring doesn't mean anything to us on the Cape, by whether it's governmental agencies. I don't know if legislatures realize what goes on here in the springtime. I managed Chatham Bars Inn for 12 years, Wauquasit Resort and Club, Golf Club for 12 years, Witchmere for 5 years. I've now been selling real estate for several years. The springtime sets the tone for the Cape for the year. It really does. Because if you're going to plan a conference, if you're going to plan a wedding, even with the internet and everything that's going on right now, people still drive down here. You've got small businesses that are impacted, mom and pop businesses that rely on the spring business to get here, to get it going. You've got people like landscapers and contractors that ship their employees from off Cape, on Cape, that will now start having to deal with overtime, impacts that will affect their bottom line. You have wait staff that won't be able to work because there won't be business here. So while we're not here to talk about the new bridge, I know one thing. When I moved to the Cape in 1985, there was a big bridge problem. I also moved here in conjunction with the big dig starting. And in that time, they were able to figure out how to bury the Southeast Expressway under the city of Boston and do it successfully. I've come to every one of these meetings that you guys pull off every couple of years, and you nod your heads, you say the same thing, the same group cast of characters come along, and you placate us with this nonsense that this would happen whether there's a new bridge or not. We need a plan for a new bridge. There is no question. I don't know if that's in the works. I don't know. I know that the Cape gives hundreds of millions of tax revenue every year to the state of Massachusetts. You guys use the Cape like it's an ATM, and you don't understand the impact that what this is doing to the people in April, May, and June. And that we're going to try our hardest, and if we need to work 3 crews should be working starting day one, to not make this a 55-day project, but to make this a 30-day project. How you ever negotiated, or the guy that negotiated this with whomever did a nice job for himself, because it should have been negotiated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and make it 30 days, and then do the Bourne Bridge in 2019, because Wendy's absolutely right. Our season, when I moved to the Cape, the season was June 1st to September 5th. That was the season. Through the hard work of all the chambers and all the merchants associations, the Cape business starts in March. Real estate sales start in February and March. People come down now to buy a home for the summertime. So you guys have no idea the economic ramifications this is having on every piece of business. I now live off Cape, so yes, is it going to be painful for me? It sure is. But that's not even the piece of it. The piece of it is this is a catastrophe. I understand the bridges have to be fixed, but I also understand they've needed to be fixed for years. 2 years ago, you guys painted the bridge, and it screwed things up. That money was wasted. Painting the bridge just did nothing for us. It gave us no more business. It scared people away. And if you don't think that this is going to scare people away, you're sadly mistaken, because it is. And it's infuriating because you're sitting here, your pocketbooks aren't going to be impacted. None of you people that are talking about this or managing this, pocketbooks are going to be affected. Small businesses are, big businesses are, the people that fund this kind of work is going to affect it. And it gets announced 3 weeks ago that, by the way, we're closing the bridge down for 55 days in the springtime. That's insanity. And anybody who has, I can't believe this room isn't packed with more people in an outcry, because Wendy's right. I mean, this is going to ruin the spring market on Cape Cod. It's going to affect the summer market, and then it will affect the fall market. Because if I were somebody coming to plan a conference, I would run for the hills, and that's what people are going to do. What you've done really, in essence, is made a really nice marketing point for the Berkshires, Newport, Vermont, New Hampshire. Don't go, because you know what the Boston news people are going to say. Don't head to the Cape. There's a 10-mile backup. So enough of that. You hear that? Have you guys considered things like, and these are just ideas, because I've lived on that bridge for hours at a time in your traffic backups. Closing off exit 1 so that, because what happens is people jump off exit 5, they try to get through on exit 6, they back up exit 6, and then all of a sudden there's a bottleneck to get that one lane. My other suggestion is, have you thought about things like on heavy traffic periods, diverting all the traffic on Fridays when people are coming to Cape, making both lanes coming on Cape and diverting the people going off Cape to the Bourne Bridge, so that there's 2 lanes of traffic coming on Cape when it's busy. And conversely, on Sundays, closing the lane coming on the bridge so that the traffic going off the Cape, which is heavy, is 2 lanes going off and diverting oncoming traffic to the Bourne Bridge. It would just seem to me that there are other options than just closing the lanes and letting the same insanity, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Your PowerPoint with your pictures of things, you could have put beer cans there, and I would have believed that that's what needed to happen. It doesn't matter to me. I know what's going to happen. It's going to screw up our season, and I know safety is the utmost importance. But you guys that are hired and paid for by these tax dollars, all of you, including the gentleman here who thanked everybody in the room, this isn't the Cape of 30 years ago. It's not the Cape of 20 years ago. It's the Cape that these people in this room have worked their asses off to build into a vibrant, year-round place. And I'm tired of every couple of years, the Army Corps of Engineers coming in and kicking us in the teeth. Because this is not, it doesn't end for us Memorial Day. All the business that would have happened in the summertime is not going to take place. And when people hear about the fall, I had no idea the Bourne Bridge was happening until just now, so surprise. Again, screw up. I feel sorry for the people in Falmouth. This is outrageous. This is so outrageous, and I can't believe you have the audacity to bring us this kind of a plan and not working 24 hours a day. In my opinion, that should start day 1. And whoever negotiated this contract should have their head examined, because we can't stand for it anymore. We can't. It's not just it's not just the people here. You've got wait staff. You've got line level employees. Let me just finish, because this is important. You have food pantries that are so please just do something.
Thank you. No, I appreciate, honestly, I appreciate that. One of the challenges we have is there is really only 2 ways onto the Cape, over bridges that need to be maintained. No matter what is said about additional bridges, constructing new bridges, this is reality, and we have to maintain these bridges. Very good point about the shoulder season now with the spring and the fall. Unfortunately, the type of work that we have to do that I think we showed, we cannot do it in the winter. One of the challenges in the winter is if it snows, the roads have to be plowed, and so that creates problems. Because we are pouring concrete, and because there is a certain amount of time required for that concrete to set, it's really not a case of getting more people on board. It's
It
really.
is a case of getting more people on board, and I was raised in construction family, so I understand all the nuances
Yes,
of that.
thank you, sir.
But the point that you are only having 2 crews, and you said if we start running out of time, we'll put 3 crews on if we make it to Memorial Day. My argument is put 3 crews on starting day 1 and not push it to Memorial Day.
Yeah.
Your timeline is nonsense.
Thank you, sir.
Could you answer why you're not putting 3 crews on right from the beginning? Matt Pitt at Cape Cod Broadcasting. Why does the contract not if you could put 3 crews on prior to Memorial Day, why aren't you putting 3 crews on from day 1?
There's, the requirement is multiple crews. The contractor's indicating, 8 to 10 workers per shift. There's certain parts of the work where they have to let concrete cure. So, I think the curing can happen when there's not actually up there in the middle of the night. So it's the type of work. You're not gonna get 100% production out of adding a whole 3rd shift. But Zoppo, our contractor and the Corps, the people managing the construction, are gonna keep an eye for any places that we can add crews to make up time, make it shorter.
Other mitigation, Sue Moran for Falmouth and the RTA. So what kind of police detail have you worked in? And in terms of really working with the police to adjust, and increase customer service, because everyone here has been in the place where you're in traffic, 4 hours, you get to the front and you don't even see what the issue is. So I think if there's added police detail it's going to be confusing. I'm sure there'll be people that are new to the Cape to actually move the traffic when there is some. I'm just curious what arrangements have been made.
We have, there'll be police details. There'll be at least 2 police details managing traffic by the construction zone. And they're limited in the lane, so it's 2, 1 12-foot wide lane in each direction. The traffic is just supposed to flow. There's really nothing, I wouldn't say that we have the police details will be there, and then we'll rely on them to decide how best to help traffic flow.
John, I know that you and Sean said that you inspect the bridges on a regular basis.
Hmm?
What's the odds of getting up there, getting into the work, and then finding a surprise and it throws off this schedule altogether?
There'll be some small surprises in terms of like difficulty in demolishing the modular joint where it joins into the bridge or the concrete. There may be a little bit additional concrete one way or the other. It shouldn't be. Our contractor has some time built into their schedule to deal with some of that small, extra work.
Just last year, we did a total inspection of the Sagamore Bridge. Probably saw people hanging off of the superstructure last summer. And so we're pretty confident that those major surprises will not happen. As John mentioned, we're going out so many feet in breaking up that concrete. When we break it up, we may see, we need to go another foot. But the contractor that we have has experience with putting these in, and so we don't expect any super, delays here.
Right. Our experienced contractor should help. They've seen this, they've done it before.
And this is, excuse me, sir, and just for your information, these are the same type of joints that are in there already, and so it's not a case where we're going to have, we're going to be learning how to put these joints in. These joints, we know they work, and it's proven technology. I'm sorry. Yeah, first.
Hi, my name is Phil McCarthy from North Dennis. I have 2 questions. I want to know if in this day and age of media and instant news, if you're going to put up a website or a link or a camera that works so that those of us, and for us that live here, the bridges are our lifelines. We have planes in my household to catch during the period of the closing of the Sagamore from Logan. We have trains to catch, Amtrak from Route 128 station. We have medical appointments at Boston hospitals. We would like to be able to look and get a real-time view of what the traffic condition is, so we know whether we have to, just saying plan accordingly in this day and age isn't enough. You can set up a website, you can set up a link on an existing website, you can see to it that the cameras that never work on the Sagamore Bridge work, so that we, the people that have to use the bridge, can find out what time we have to leave to make our appointments. My second question is, does the contract contain any enhancements for finishing early or penalties for finishing late? And if not, why not?
I think for the traffic, getting the word out in cameras and things like that, I think what we're relying on is the existing tools that are out there for people that use, the cell signals to tell you what the bridge backup is like. So
Yeah, it's, Mass DOT has the bridge cameras, and I mean, we'll reach out to them and provide that comment.
Or a link on your website so that we can check the real-time conditions.
Yeah,
yeah, again, I think we're relying on the existing tools
Yeah,
that are out
That's
there.
not enough. The existing tools don't work. They tell you there's a delay, you get there, there isn't. Or they tell you there is, and you get there, and it's vice versa.
Right.
We've all seen that happen.
okay, that's, I'm sorry.
It's a request.
It's a good point.
As far as the getting done early incentives or penalties, this contract isn't structured that way, but we've had intent meetings with the contractor to make sure they understand, and I think they are committed to doing whatever they can to get done early. There's no contractual incentive for that. Maria?
Maria Oliva from the Cape Cod Canal Regional Chamber. Do you have a list of the message boards, where they're going, and also the delays of time, because that's happened before, so that you were one, 24-minute wait, 45-minute wait. You've done that before, and where are the message boards going?
Yeah, we do. We know where the message boards are going. There's a map that shows where, they're on Route 3, Route 6, and I think we're going to put one also on Scenic Highway. We did partner in the past with Mass DOT to do the time, the expected delay, traffic
Right.
delay.
Are they going to be doing that, though?
That I have to check on. I don't know if we have those arrangements with DOT right now.
Is that something you can follow up to do?
We can certainly follow up. Yeah.
I think somebody from Mass DOT is here. Jim, I don't know if I want to put you on the spot, but is that something you could follow up with?
Yeah, we can definitely have that conversation. I mean, I do government community affairs, so if there was communications back and forth, it didn't happen to me, so I don't want to say they didn't happen, but that's definitely something we can talk to the Corps about.
Right.
Some of the highway signs
Are there going to be updates along the way, and if so, what is the mechanism for that? And if the public wants information, who is the point of contact, and how do we reach or communicate with that person?
We do. We'll be utilizing, the Mass DOT updates, or we also have our USACE Bridge Work Alerts email, where we send out updates for, when we're changing the phase, when we're on the bridge, when we're off, that type of thing. So we'll be using the normal tools that we use.
In our core website also.
Yes.
We'll
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
those.
Facebook. I mean, our district office will use, their core website, Twitter, Facebook, etc. We're trying to get the word out as best we can.
And with whom, if there was a question from the public, who do we reach out to?
Public affairs.
Yes,
Our
Public
core, our district office, public affairs.
Really good question. My name is Kathy Palmer. I work for Representative David Vieira. Did you say that the Sagamore Bridge sidewalks will remain open during construction?
during phases 1 and 2, the sidewalks will be open. Phase 3 is directly adjacent to the sidewalk, and the sidewalk will have to be closed for phase 3.
Yeah, during work on that phase 3, the sidewalks will be closed because we'll have folks right next to it. Now, on that night, they'll be open, but you know, when there's no work going on, they'll be open.
Strange question, but
No, that's actually, that's a good question.
yeah, because people do have that as a concern.
Is there a plan then to accommodate the pedestrians on the Sagamore Bridge when the sidewalk is closed? I can tell you now, I've already had that question. My name's Glenn Cannon from the Cape Cod Commission. I have a couple other follow-up questions too.
Yeah,
But that is one that's already come up. People do walk. If you go out there on the Sagamore Bridge, people walk in there every single day.
Right,
So
they
if you
do.
close off the sidewalk, I think there ought to be some kind of service to get people from one side of the bridge to the other side of the bridge who don't have the ability to drive.
At this time, we don't have any provisions for that, you know.
Yeah, and just while I have you here, I'm just curious, does the Army Corps, do you have a policy on delay for the travelers? Let's say if there's more than an hour delay, do you close down the work site? You know, if there's more than a 4-hour delay, do you close down the work site?
Yeah, I know.
Of that nature.
I know Mass DOT has
Yeah.
some provisions and policy things like that. With this type of construction that we're doing, you know, we can't just pull up. If you're demolishing a hole in the bridge, you can't just pick everything up and get off to give the road back. So it's not possible to do that with this type of construction that we're doing.
And then is Army Corps going to have a resident engineer on site?
Yes, we're gonna have a resident construction division has personnel that'll be overseeing and doing quality assurance.
And I know we just had this discussion. Is there going to be a MassDOT employee assigned to this project, particularly for traffic management?
Not that I'm aware of. We've had coordination. We have had a coordination meeting. We try to keep Mass DOT in the loop. We'll keep their operations center in the loop on what we're doing on our bridge, but it's a Corps of Engineers project. It's not. We don't expect to have Mass DOT on site.
And then for everybody else in the room, I will tell you, there are 2 other studies underway, one by MassDOT for the canal area study. They're coming forward either at the end of March or early April. It is very important that you voice your opinion to what you see for these delays of the bridges. And then there is also an Army Corps study that's going to be taking place sometime May, June timeframe, right, with some public outreach. And again, they're really looking at whether or not they're going to replace the bridges or maintain these bridges essentially forever. And again, they need to hear from you. So, you know, people
Randy Hunt, State Representative. So the Sagamore Bridge is in my legislative district and the off-going lanes on the Bourne Bridge as well. We share the Bourne Bridge with David Vieira. So I'll keep my questions around the Sagamore Bridge mostly. First is the gentleman over here asked a question that I think that we need to take a look at. Is there going to be coordination between the town of Bourne, the DOT, and the Army Corps relative to the entrance that comes into the Sagamore Bridge at the Christmas tree shop?
Right. We've had, not related to this project, but in the past projects, I've been in coordination meetings with the DOT, state police, town of Bourne, from Sandwich as well. And we're not pushing to close that. We've deferred that to the police departments and the towns and Mass DOT. And if they wanted to close that, we wouldn't object to it, but the consensus was that it wouldn't be beneficial, but a net overall benefit.
There's been a lot of discussion about that for many years, obviously.
Yep.
And part of the regional traffic study has a solution for that, to actually bring an entrance in that's about 5/8 of a mile back.
Yes.
Which will take, won't
Yep.
happen during this period.
Right.
However, for this particular schedule, I would suggest that Bourne and the DOT work very closely together to figure out if they would benefit from that. In other words, anybody who went around and went through the town of Sandwich and down to Bourne, their only option would be essentially just to continue down Sandwich Road and head towards the Bourne Bridge. And that may well keep the lineup on Route 6 and be fairer if nothing else. Well, yeah, you can jump up in a second.
One.
Thank you, Marie. Next thing. Within the 10-year time frame that I was talking to the Army Corps of Engineers 2 years ago about, was the replacement of the decking on the Sagamore Bridge. So for a second, I want to talk about the next biggest thing. It's bigger than this by a long shot as far as a project.
The deck replacement?
The deck replacement. And there were, I was talking with the people about ways that you can create sections of decking off-site, move them into place to make things go faster, and various different things that they were taking a look at, as opposed to pouring them in place right on the Sagamore Bridge. The question that I have about that is this, and this is related to the replacement bridges. If at the end of this year, when this study is completed and put out by the Army Corps of Engineers, whether to replace or continue to maintain the bridges as is, if the decision is to replace the bridges, would that decking be able to be put off to the point where it would not have to be done at all? Or are we looking at still having to do that, and what kind of scope of closure would that require, and approximately how soon would we be dealing with that issue?
Well, some of the timing on when that deck replacement happens, it really depends on Congress at this point. We're asking for the funds to do that work. We don't know when it'll show up. When it does, it'll be similar to this in that it'll be one lane in each direction. Whether it can be put off, I mean, the third bridge, if there's a replacement bridge authorized, you're still years and years away. My opinion is that deck would have to be done. If we get the money, we would be looking to do that deck replacement work.
So can I ask you this simpler question?
Yes, sir.
How long will the decking last that's there now? What's the outside?
Yep, the decking, well, similar to some of the pictures we showed of being up there to maintain that modular joint, we've been up there almost the same amount of time, if not more, patching potholes on the abutments. So the deck, the concrete abutments are concrete structures that are hollow. They have decking over the top, and that decking is degrading, causing the road surface to fail. So all the potholes, if you drive over the Sagamore, on the concrete abutments, you'll see there's square sections of new pavement. Those are, we've been up to the same areas multiple times with our own folks and even contractors. We've used Lawrence Lynch quite a bit to help with maintain the paving. It becomes a safety hazard in that the potholes develop very quickly now. For motorcycles, cars, you end up you can have accidents and public safety issues if you let the deck degrade for years and years.
So my question was, how long will the current decking last? And let me ask you, does that answer change depending on the funding from Congress?
No, I mean, the deck...
There should be an engineering answer.
From an engineering standpoint, the deck is at the end of its useful life. It's all about trying to keep it safe. Nothing's going to fall through the deck, but it's a road surface issue. The deck is failing, which causes the road surface, the pavement, to fail. So it can end up being very potholed, very rough, and a danger to folks on motorcycles and smaller cars.
So I take from your answer that the time is now.
Yeah,
The project could be started any time, and it would be time for the project to go. The last thing is this. In this study to replace the bridges, we had a meeting with a representative from the Army Corps of Engineers and our Congressman Bill Keating and several other people to specifically talk about the quantitative measurements that go into that study relative to replacing a bridge. which includes impacts to the economy if you don't do it, okay, and that's part of this, as well as qualitative impacts, the problems that are created for our lifestyle and other things like, you know, you can't get an ambulance across the bridge at a certain time, or, you know, various issues that are qualitative in people's lives. I would simply suggest this, and I think that my good friend Wendy at the Chamber of Commerce ought to be one of the repositories for all of the stories that we have, and I'm sure the Cape Cod Times is going to be a good repository for stories as well during this 55 days and then the 80 some odd days for the Bourne Bridge, as to all of those qualitative issues that go on. And to the point the other gentleman was making, the quantitative losses of business, because we can compare these 55 days to other years, recent years, during that same time, and be able to come up with numbers that should influence that report in a way that I hope that at the end of this year the answer is going to be that we need to replace those bridges. So I guess my only question for you is, as we go through this process and collect all that information, is there going to be a way to funnel that information into the people that are doing the study?
Yes, sir. Very good point. And I was talking to the study program manager this morning about that, and I think it's been mentioned, they are getting ready to hold a series of public meetings on the Cape and on the South Shore, starting in the late spring of this year, going through until the fall, with getting these kind of stories. And the report it's still being written, but they're leaning towards replacement now. I mean, the report started as a pure repair of the existing bridges, based upon input from the community, from senior leaders who said, it's really great except it's crazy, we need new bridges. They have been looking at the replacements of the bridges. And this spring and summer is really the opportunity to get those kind of stories that are that really tell the narrative about why the bridges need to be replaced with modern bridges that will improve the through traffic.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Has there been any consideration for using the railroad bridge during these times where they just would make the railroad bridge a road?
Oh, dear God.
You wouldn't be able to make it a road. The Cape Flyers, a success story for sure. But there's no way.
Why couldn't you make it a road?
Pardon me?
Why couldn't you make it a road?
Because it's a railroad.
Well, okay. No, it's okay. It's interesting. You know, theoretically, you could put a road surface down there to bring traffic through. Challenge, of course, is that when the railroad bridge is lowered, you're about 15 feet above the water, at which point we have no canal traffic going through, no marine traffic. And so we really can't keep the railroad bridge down the entire time.
Excuse me. If I may,
Yes.
just for the record, regarding the closing of exit 1, the police chief in Bourne and Sandwich, the school superintendents, and the town administrators are vehemently against this. Reason why is that all you're doing is taking horrible traffic on Route 6 and pushing it to Route 6A, miles and miles on Route 6A. So nobody from Bourne and Sandwich would be able to go over the Sagamore Bridge. It just would create so much more traffic problems and gridlock that you're just doubling the problem. So I just want to say that I know that you would defer,
And
but you've heard this from us before, because we've talked about it before.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If the premise is that it's at least 10 years away from a new bridge, could you realistically talk about the fact that these two bridges are going to make it 10 more years? From an engineering standpoint, with the amount of continued and increased repairs that are going on right now? Realistically, how these bridges
They
gonna
will.
last
I mean,
10
they're
years?
83 years old now, but that's why we've been out there. You know, our bridge inspections every 2 years. You know, we have a complete inspection.
So there'd never be a chance where trucks, wide loads, the trucks that bring the goods over would have to be banned from either of those bridges within the next 10 years. That's not a possibility?
It's always a possibility. Anything can happen. Further damage, deterioration.
So it's possible within 10 years these bridges couldn't handle truck traffic?
We don't have any plans to post them for, other than regular highway loads. We have no plans right now. Anything's possible, but we have no plans to post them for other than full capacity. Gentleman back.
Just one question for psychological reasons, is there any way to put an angle on the granite for the sidewalk on the other side? Because it's just psychologically pushing you farther over into the center.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Well, make it more like a Jersey barrier rather than a straight up and down curve.
Oh, to make it safer when you're on the sidewalk. Is that your?
No, well, yeah, that too, but just so that, I mean, right now it goes straight up and down, so I tend to drive more out.
For when you're driving?
Yeah. It's not this issue, it's just another issue.
Good point. That's the biggest challenge that we have with these bridges is that they were built in the 30s for 30s size vehicles, and there's no way that we would ever build these bridges now. They're, 85, 90 feet wide? 40, so, okay, so there's 45 feet wide. The current design is like double that for the same number of lanes. And so that's really the challenge we have with this discussion about the renovation of the bridges or repair of the bridges versus new construction. We can spend hundreds, tens of millions of dollars repairing these bridges, and we're going to have to spend some money over the next few years. But at the end of the day, all the public is going to see is, oh, it's a nice paint job you just did, but I'm still sitting in traffic. And so what we're doing now is we're just maintaining the bridges so that they continue to be safe, so that we continue to be able to accommodate the full load of traffic. But really any major reconfigurations or changes to the bridge, we don't see, we're not going to be able to do. We had talked about expanding the width of the bridges, but structurally it's just, unless you throw a whole lot of money against it, it's not practical.
I don't think that's what he was, that's not what he was saying.
Yes.
Saying, if the curb, instead of, you were talking about leaning in.
Yes.
Which gets a little scary when you're going up against the thing, but if it leaned
Towards
3
the
inches out, you take 3 inches of the sidewalk.
Yes, sir.
But give that sense that you're not going to rub your car up against it.
Yes, and I've been on the bridge when trucks have gone by with sparks flying. I think that if you look at the way the bridge is actually constructed, the curbs, we'd really have to take apart the bridge to redo those curbing. Also, it's designed, unfortunately, the way it's designed, and so we really can't do major modifications to it.
I'd like to press that question on the bridge once more, the railroad bridge. The argument was that you'd lower the bridge and the boats couldn't go by.
Yes, sir.
You're the Army Corps of Engineers. You could tell the commercial boats that they're going to go through at midnight when the traffic is not there, and they lower it back during the day. They do that down in Florida every day. The Pasco bridges go down for 15 minutes or 10 minutes to get the boats through. It's a real, I don't understand why you don't consider the railroad bridge. I don't, it's 10 more years, and you could use that bridge during these projects.
About more trains?
The other question is.
Okay.
This meeting has a lot of people in it, which I really didn't expect. And it's like, is this the first time people are hearing about this? Because, it seems like it's very, I don't know if you've been talking to all these people beforehand.
About this project?
Yeah, like all of a sudden, bang, we're here, and like used on all the Zoom room.
Well, I'll defend the Army Corps because there have been a lot of public meetings, a lot of public hearings, and thanks to Tom Care's leadership, we from time to time get together and talk about these projects. And I think 2 years ago they told us we were headed for New Lane Drop. So 2 years ago we knew that this day was coming. I expected a little bit more notice than a couple of weeks that it was coming. But with that said, we've already communicated with a very large list of people that we direct email to. There's a visit to our visitor industry to give them the heads up and know, plan ahead and here's some information. But I do think Maria Oliva from the Canal Chamber suggested perhaps we have some continually ongoing meetings, have some more conversations as it goes along. I do have grave concerns about the traffic gaps are great, but we know they pushed him into some very beautiful, lovely neighborhoods in Sandwich, and people are trying to find that back way, they're just trying to find the Bourne Bridge. So I do think there could be more communication amongst us to help people find their way, perhaps ask Mass DOT to help with additional signage, and we can certainly even point the way to the Bourne Bridge. I hate to say it, but there are people that don't know that we have 2 automobile bridges or even a train bridge. So certainly more train options if that's possible, but signage to the bridges, because you will have gridlock in some beautiful neighborhoods in Sandwich, and I just think we can avoid that.
No, that's a very good point about keeping the public and everyone informed during construction. And as I said, we have at the Corps of Engineers on the canal, we have a public website. Corps of Engineers has their official website there. And there's going to be a lot of interest in this schedule and where we are with, where we are with the contractor versus where we thought he would be. And so I think someone had asked about the resident construction office. We will have construction program managers, project managers on site with the contractor. And so we will ensure that the public is kept up to date, and all you stakeholders are kept up to date on where we are with the progress of this project. Okay.
Can I just mention one other thing, please? Oops, sorry. Ken's been up patiently. Great point, Bert Tallerman with the Cape Cod 5. Great points have been made with respect to both the seasonal traveler as well as folks who live here traveling off Cape. I think the other very important consideration is, those who live on the other side of the bridge, who commute here to work, and the amount of employers here, including ourselves and lots of other employers who depend on that labor force is significant. And so managing this and planning for the future so that it does not impede our ability as a region to recruit workforce that we need desperately from the other side of the bridge. So, just another important, there are 3 key constituents here who travel.
Yep. I guess just circling back to the notice on this, we just recently got the construction contractor, when it was awarded, we had a requirement for them to immediately order the joint. This modular joint for the Sagamore Bridge is a custom-built joint for every application. It's a different size and the dimensions and number of bars. So they expedited the fabrication of that modular joint, and when it was awarded in November, that's what we wanted, but we weren't sure until they actually came through. Their fabricator, Watson Bowman, actually came through and said, yes, it will be ready to be installed this spring. So we kind of had to wait to get the construction contractor's schedule with an assurance that the modular joint would be ready to install.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Bilodeau. I own the Sagamore Inn Restaurant, which is only 1 mile from the Sagamore Bridge. And I've been enduring this for years. We bought our business in 2009. For the first 4 years of our business, the bridges were closed every year. And my impact of business has been half. Every single weekend, our business is impacted by that. I've never been able to be reimbursed. In 2012, on Mother's Day, the bridge was closed, supposedly, because to do the construction. It was taking 3 hours to get from Harwich to my place. People were so upset because it was Mother's Day, they had another hour to go to meet their mothers to spend the day. People coming over the bridge from Sagamore were able to get to our place before the people coming from Harwich and Dennis to get to us. With the new apps that weren't even involved on, people going all over, I just happened to be right at the crossroads of where the traffic hits the worst, and it's a nightmare. And I have people coming in to use the bathrooms, and they're just so upset that they can't get anywhere. I don't know why we can't come up with a better way of traffic where on Friday nights, 2 lanes are accessing on, Sunday nights or Sunday afternoons, 2 accesses are going off. Again, my impact of business has been substantial. I'm seasonal. I will not get that back. What are you going to do for me for that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have any authority to reimburse anybody for that type of impact. I guess on the kind of the question or the statement about making, changing the lane, so you're taking, putting 3 lanes in one direction and, or none in the other. That's been looked at. I've been in coordination meetings with the state police and Mass DOT, and a contractor that had, transportation engineer experts in the meetings that were hired by Mass DOT, and they looked at that, and it just doesn't work logistically with the feeder roads to the bridge. At Gillette Stadium, when there's a football game, they do that with the road going into the parking areas, and then on the way out, it's they have space, and the roads and size of the roads and layout is designed for that, whereas Route 3 and Route 6, it just doesn't work logistically. That was the conclusion from the transportation engineers that looked at it.
My name is Sue, I'm from Hyannis. This is sort of an unrelated question, but can anything be done about the falling ice that occurred this winter while you're working on the project, or even in the future? Is that something that is...
Yeah, we saw that was unfortunate. It's similar, Mass DOT has thousands of bridges with similar type, issues. I think it's from my perspective, it's a function of we're in New England with weather. There's no engineering solution, I don't believe, to that.
And I mean, and when I asked about that, I was talking to some folks who had been at the canal for a while, and they said they'd never seen that happen before. And my immediate concern was, what have we done on the bridge to sort of create that condition? Were we working on something? Did we have some temporary formwork up there? And the answer was no, it was just the way the bridges always are. And so the reason was it's just the way the weather pattern was that day. It just, the heavy snow and then all of a sudden the quick thaw just didn't provide the opportunity for the snow or the ice to melt away. And it was really, we looked at the cameras and of that incident, and while we didn't see the actual ice or snow hitting the car, we did see during that time a couple of, it almost looked like big snowballs hitting the road surface. So I think that's what it was, versus the ice. And so with the high speed and with this heavy wet snow hitting, it just created that unfortunate situation. But there's really nothing we could, nothing we could do to prevent that from happening there.
You're monitoring it, or just putting up a notice falling ice, or...
I mean, yeah, we've talked about it. We can look at that, but it was really just a moment-to-moment situation there. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. I think I know there's still lots of questions, but we're getting the hook here. So
no, it's not the hook. I just want
please,
to say,
it is.
We can stay as long as you want. The purpose for convening this meeting really was, I felt that stakeholders as well as businesses should have an opportunity to ask the questions that have been raised. you can see from the legislative delegation and particularly Representative Hunt's comments, those folks pay attention, and there is some time now in Matt Pitter's comments relative to wide loads and some of the other issues that have been raised, I think gives us an opportunity to have more conversation, more dialogue with the Army Corps prior to this contract. And if there's anything that can be changed realistically that would reduce some of the adverse impacts, I think it will be considered. The legislative delegation is here. Congressman Keating called this morning, his representatives here. So I'm here as long as you want to be here to answer questions. But that's really the purpose, and we can reconvene at any time, and we will keep you informed as to what we're learning in terms of the website. And I think this gentleman's comments were excellent, and I don't see why some of those things couldn't be accommodated. So we've got some notes, and I'll sit down and continue to ask questions, but I think that's really what the
I
purpose
just
is.
say one last thing. And then I'm leaving, because I've sat through probably 10 of these meetings in my career on the Cape, and you've all said the same thing in all 10 of these meetings, and you nod your head, and you say you're taking notes, but you're affecting thousands and thousands of people's lives. So if the best case scenario, if you had a plan for a new bridge today, it's not gonna happen for 10 years, and we're still in the talks of that, that's really concerning. And if you look at what's going on in Berkshire County right now with their bridges and Stockbridge, and they're failing, and they're in a frenzy right now with roads closed and things like that. Again, excuse my French, piss poor planning on everyone's part, in my opinion, because I've sat through these meetings and heard the same nonsense over and over again. So to think that I believe a shred of what you people have said is an understatement. And the fact that you're impacting people's lives and don't really care is really unconscionable. So I know the bridges need to be fixed, but I don't think you guys care one way or the other, because this is all gonna go away in a few months, and we're gonna be back at it again, and then in 3 years, we're all gonna be sitting here, and you're all gonna be saying the same thing over and over again.
Tony, I
It's
think
horrendous.
there's a plan, not to hijack the meeting, but there is a plan that's been developed through the Canal Area Transportation Study that is proven to reduce congestion in the area. It requires 2 new spans. Massachusetts is taking great leadership in this role. We now have, Army Corps is now doing their part of the work, but what the 10-year time horizon is unacceptable. We're gonna be working on building a coalition and building a support Cape-wide for that, so there's some consensus on that, and also finding a way to pay for
Then
it.
it needs to be, then it needs to be in the,
This
more
plan
needs to
is
be
gonna-
talked about.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think it will be. I think that's my promise to you, is that there'll be wider communication on what the fix is.
I think that's.
These guys are doing a great job fixing old, out-of-date bridges. Kudos to you. It's up to us to get the new solution.
Tom, if I could just, have the opportunity to, we have the Cape delegation here, or their representatives, if I could just see it like for 5 minutes after, just to give you an update on some of the stuff that we have, that you can then forward.
I also
Just
wanted-
like 5 minutes.
Thank you. I also wanted to mention at the outset, I was trying to identify people. I just did give a blanket sort of endorsement to the delegation, but I know Troy Clarkson, who represents Senator DiMacedo, is here, and the senator certainly has a great interest in this as well. I talked to him recently. So, I mean, the right people are here to try to advance some of the concerns raised here today. So, you know, I don't work for the Corps. I'm just trying to, let folks be educated about what's going on. These guys have a tough job. They're trying to do what they have to do, and we'll have continued dialogue and meetings as necessary, rather than keep people totally in the dark. So, are there any more questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just to fill in the gap you may have left, is anything scheduled to be repaired that would cause, say, 25% closure on any one bridge for a month or so in the next 8 years?
Is there bridge construction that would cause more lane closures?
Scheduled maintenance.
Well, it was mentioned like the deck replacement.
I know, but that's pretty major. What if something smaller that would cause even one lane loss for a month?
We're always looking at, we have the inspection reports, and we're looking, a lot of when we're able to do the repairs on these bridges depends on funding. So, and there can be changes, you know, we get our normal budget, but there can be, our budget can get plussed up to take care of some things, and we're not certain on the timing of when those funds show up sometimes, so, you know.
But if the funds were available, it's likely that you would have to operate on the bridges in the next 8 years for a fair amount of time.
Yes, I think that's one of the conclusions of, or one of the points of the bridge study is that even if we are to replace these bridges in the future, we're still going to have to continue maintenance. As John mentioned, right now we have nothing scheduled for the near term. However, if during, you know, every 2 years we do major inspections on these bridges, if we see something that does not look good, we may have to sort of speed up our repair work. You know, we didn't expect a light pole to fall down, and it did, and so that then forced us to increase some repair work on the structure, and that was really unknown.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions for these folks?
Thank you. Thank you.
Lawyer, litigator, I hope, deposition.